What is going on, White Sox fans? My name is Michael Suareo, and welcome to another episode of the Pipeline to 35th, a monthly Sox on 35th show where we keep you up to date on what is going on in the White Sox farm system. Before we get started, if you're not already, make sure you are subscribed to our Sox on 35th YouTube channel so you can watch these videos on demand, and make sure that you are also subscribed to our podcast channels on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast so that you do not miss an episode of Pipeline to 35th or of the Sox on 35th show. We are officially less than a week away from day one of the 2024 first-year player MLB Draft. White Sox hold the 5th overall pick in this draft, and we are going to break down some of the options that are going to be presented to the White Sox momentarily. I'm going to be joined by fellow Sox on 35th contributor Noah Phalen in a few minutes, and we are going to talk about the draft and what we're hearing, what we're seeing, what potential opportunities are going to come about the pick, how the board could fall, and what options could be available for the White Sox when they are officially on the clock. But before we get to that, we do have a couple things that we have to get to. First and foremost, we've seen some movement throughout the system over this last month. I know it was a little while ago, but Drew Thorpe was called up from AA to the majors and has made multiple starts now with the Chicago White Sox. And dude's looking pretty good. I mean, he looked solid in his debut about a month ago. His second start was a little shaky, yes, but he has now had 3 quality starts in a row where he's showing the command is still a little shaky, but it's getting better, and that's something that he's never had an issue with throughout his minor league career, so it's not something I'm worried about. But he is showing exactly why he was regarded as one of the top prospects in all of baseball. Does he have this ace potential? Probably not. He's not going to be someone that strikes out 10 batters in 6 innings. And we're seeing it right now. He's getting 4 or 5 strikeouts every 6-inning outing that he's shown so far. But he is making it very difficult on opposing batters to square up on the ball. He's inducing weak contact, which is something he excelled at the minor league level. I know his last 2 starts now, the average exit velocity against him was under 80 miles an hour, which the average exit velocity is much higher than that. So that alone is just impressive. The way he's utilizing that changeup that everyone knew was his best pitch, I mean, it's getting better and better every outing. He is just filthy with that pitch. The fastball is starting to gain a little bit of velocity. I saw it top out about 93 miles an hour, which, again, it's not spectacular, but it's good enough. It's good enough, and he's utilizing it well. He's locating it well. When he's locating his pitches, it doesn't matter when he doesn't have overwhelming stuff. The guy can just pitch, and he can pitch well. And it's really exciting to see him perform at the major league level, especially considering he skipped AAA altogether and he's already performing this well. Yes, it's still early. Yes, we need to temper our expectations a little bit for a rookie. But I'm liking what I've seen so far. I'm on record as saying I've been a Drew Thorpe fan since they traded for him, since before they traded for him, really. So I am very excited to see the success that he is showing so far. We've also had a couple promotions from Birmingham to AAA Charlotte over the last couple weeks. First, we saw Kai Bush get promoted to the Charlotte Knights, which I think it was always between him and Mason Adams to be that next person called up from the Birmingham rotation, that rotation that's just been a freaking all-star rotation all season. And Kai Bush has absolutely earned it. I mean, his ERA was about 2.12 in 80 and 2/3 innings at the AA level. Maybe there was a little bit of luck involved. His field independent stats showed that it should have been probably closer to the mid threes, but still more than good enough to get it done. He's bounced back really well after a rough season last year, and he was always viewed as the second piece in that Lucas Giolito-Ronaldo Lopez trade, and expectations weren't quite as high for him, despite him being a legitimate prospect in that trade. But he looked a lot better in 2022 than he did last season, and I think that's what the White Sox were hoping they were getting when they traded for Kyle Busch. They were hoping to get 2022 version of him. That's pretty much what they're getting this year. You know, the strikeout numbers aren't incredible, but they're definitely better than they were last year. The command can stand to improve a little bit, but I mean, he's a big 6'5", 240 plus pound left-handed pitcher. He's a workhorse. He's getting right around 6 innings every time he goes out there, and he's pitching well. And he's another one that's probably never going to be an ace, never going to be a frontline starter, but he's the type of pitcher that every team wants to have in their rotation. A guy that can just be a workhorse. You know, you're going to get quality starts out of him on a consistent basis. I mean, if that's what he can turn into at the major league level, then I think that the White Sox did more than well enough in that trade between getting him and Edgar Quero. Speaking of, Edgar Quero is another guy who just got promoted to AAA along with infielder Brooks Baldwin. And for both of them, they had their AAA debut on the same day, and they both hit a home run on their debuts. Now, Edgar Quero, last episode, I ended the show as him being my stock down prospect because throughout the month of May, he was a little underwhelming. It was unfortunate to see, but he had slowed down throughout the month of May. He started to pick it up towards the end there, but it overall wasn't the Edgar Quero that we had saw early in the season. So he was my stock down prospect. But man, he's making me eat my words because he came in through June guns a-blazing. I mean, he really picked up steam. His WRC plus was, about 50 points higher than it was the previous month, and he was back to hitting home runs. He's really starting to recapture that power that he showed back in 2022. And the on-base rate is still there. Strikeout rate's slightly higher than it's been, but it's really still very manageable. And then behind the plate, all season, he's been getting rave reviews about his actions behind the plate, his arm, and most importantly, his ability to work with the pitching staff. I mean, pitchers love throwing to him, and that pitching staff's had a lot of success this season. I do think that Edgar Quero is at least partially to give credit for that because he has been the primary catcher. He's the one working with these pitchers day in and day out. And we're seeing a lot of improvements from that pitching staff as a whole. And I do believe that he has played a part in that with his ability to call games, his ability to work with pitchers. And, you know, it's been great to see him bounce back after I was starting to get down on him last month. And now he's in AAA, and it's really not out of the question that he could make his MLB debut by the end of this season. I mean, especially with Martin Maldonado, his status is probably unclear. It's not a guarantee he's going to last the rest of the season in a White Sox uniform. It's very possible that they decide come mid-late August, maybe even September, that they want to replace him with Quero. And then Brooks Baldwin also was promoted and also hit a home run in his first game with the Charlotte Knights. You know, he's a guy that's really broken out this year. He's not someone that was super highly regarded coming into the season, but dude is raked all year. And yeah, maybe he's had a higher BABIP than average, and who knows if that's sustainable. But overall, dude's just been hitting. He's been hitting, and he's been showing a lot of defensive versatility, getting time in second base, third base, shortstop, and even left field. I mean, he showed off a lot of versatility, making him someone that could carve out a role on an MLB team as a utility man, maybe even a super utility man. I mean, dude hit 340 or just under 340 at the AA level. Put up good enough power numbers. He's never going to be a guy that matches 30 home runs a season, but if he can hit 15 to 20, that's perfectly fine. He's solid defensively wherever he's played. I mean, he's really starting to put himself on the map as a potential option for the White Sox. And with Lenyn Sosa really carving out a role for himself at third base and Brian Ramos not doing enough to really challenge him to be competing for that third base job down in AAA, that leaves second base wide open. It is very possible that opening day 2025, Brooks Baldwin is our starting second baseman. And I wouldn't be mad at it. I think he's earned it. I don't know if he's going to be this special player. I don't know if he's going to be an all-star caliber player. He could be a starting caliber player, though. It's very possible the way he's played this season. I don't want to be a prospect hugger here. If you know, you know. But he's hitting well. He's playing really well, and he is earning a look to get a spot on the MLB club. And one more thing I want to get to before I bring Noah on here. And it's not another call-up or promotion-based topic, but there is a prospect whose stock is really rising so far this season, and that is Downers Grove native George Wolkow. Man, what to say about him? Now, I even posted it on X that I'm really trying to temper my expectations with him. There's still some red flags with his performance this year. I mean, as of recording this, his strikeout rate is 45%. That's never going to cut it, whatever level you're at, even the lower levels. It's not something that you can sustain. And his BABIP, his batting average on balls in play, is a tick under 500. Again, that's just absurd, and it's unsustainable. I'm just going to say it is unsustainable, and it's unfortunate to say, but you can't get your expectations too high based on those numbers. But George Wolkow is 18 years old. He should have just graduated high school about a month and a half ago. And instead, he is playing in minor league baseball, in full season minor league baseball, at the low A level, where even at that level, he is well under the average age. And it seems like he's hitting home runs every other day. I mean, he's got 7 home runs in 27 games. He's got an OPS around 900 right now. And yeah, the strikeout rate is absurdly high, but he's also walking 12.5% of the time. So he's showing actually pretty solid plate discipline. I've seen, these strikeout numbers aren't necessarily him just being over aggressive and swinging at everything and swinging at stuff way outside the strike zone. There's clips of him taking close pitches that maybe should have been called ball 4 and said it's strike 3 on a full count, which you still don't want to see. And there's other strikeouts where I think it's more to do with holes in his swing that still need to get worked out. Again, not saying that's a good thing, but it's something you can clean up. But overall, let's not get overly excited about George Wolkow. I know people are starting to put him in the top 100 already. I'm not quite there yet. I just think that there are still some very concerning numbers there that we need to see cleaned up before we can get to that point. But be excited for George Wolkow. I mean, he is performing incredibly well. There is so much upside in that bat. There is legitimate 70 to 80 grade raw power in that bat. And there's some patience and some discipline in his approach, which leads me to believe that he can cut that strikeout rate down. And he can continue to get on base, and he can wait for his pitch and then just absolutely demolish it when he gets it. So I could get on a rant about that. I'm not going to here because this is the MLB Draft preview episode, so I'm going to leave it there. And on that note, I think it is time to welcome on my guest, Noah Phalen, so we can officially get into some MLB Draft talk. All right, joining me now on the pipeline to 35th, Noah Phalen is here so we can have some MLB draft talk. Specifically, what could the White Sox be doing with the fifth overall pick in the 2024 draft? Noah, my man, how are you doing today?
I am doing well. I'm happy to be back. We had a good conversation last time, so I'm looking forward to talking some draft, which is coming up soon.
Yeah, I have a feeling that you're gonna start being a regular on this show. I think we got some good conversations. You know prospects, you know what's going on with the White Sox, so I think we'll have you on more often. And this episode is just as good of an episode as any because, like I said, we got the draft coming up, and there is a lot of uncertainty about how the board's going to fall and what the White Sox could be doing with the fifth overall pick. But in general, they're going to have a lot of options. No matter how the board falls, it seems like there's guys that are going to be available that people would not be upset with if the White Sox landed them at 5. So just let's start off by getting your overall thoughts. What do you think about the top of this class and what options might be available to the Sox?
Look, when we first found out in the lottery that the Sox had the fifth pick, I think a lot of people were not super happy with it. Obviously I think had third lottery odds last year, so we were kind of hoping they'd be a little bit higher, and people kind of viewed this coming in as a weaker draft class at the top. But there have been some guys this year that have really proven themselves in college and have really emerged as legitimate MLB prospects. So I think sitting at fifth, I think the White Sox are in a better position than they were even when they first had the fifth pick revealed. So I like the options. I think, especially on the hitting side, which I'm guessing you and I both think is where the White Sox are leaning. I think there's a good mix of some college talents and some high school talents. So it's going to be an interesting decision for Mike Shirley and Chris Getz. But I think there are some good options, and I'm excited to see what direction they go.
Yeah, it's interesting how the board's really shaken up from where we thought it was going to be to begin the season versus where it is now. Because the big concern at the top of this class was there's a lot of first base types. You have a lot of infielders that have never played shortstop, and there was a lot of uncertainty with the prep players, and there wasn't a true breakout guy in terms of the pitchers in this class. But I mean, you looked at the class to start the season, and JJ Weatherholt was the consensus top prospect. No one was going to beat him, and now he even might be an option to fall to the White Sox at 5. And you've seen guys like Charlie Condon and Travis Bazana jump up and leap him, and you've seen a couple high school hitters break out in Connor Griffin and Bryce Rayner. Got some college pitching options that could be available. The high school pitching class is still a little bit behind, but I think that's becoming a little more common in recent drafts. So it's not a huge surprise. But I mean, overall, there's really, after the top two in Condon and Bizana, I think any of those next 6 to 8 prospects are all legitimate options for the White Sox at 5. And I mean, it's hard for them to go wrong with any of those options. Um, but another way to look at it is what strategy are they going to be putting into this? Are they looking to sign someone full slot, under slot? Are they going hitter or pitcher? I think you and me are kind of on the same boat as that, like you alluded to. But in general, what strategies are you looking at the White Sox? Which strategies do you think they're going to take with this fifth overall pick?
Honestly, I think a lot of it kind of depends on how the board falls in front of them. I mean, we might end up in a situation last year where I think the consensus was kind of the White Sox are looking for a prep position player in the first round, and they didn't anticipate Jacob Gonzalez still being on the board when they picked. And when he was, they were like, okay, well, we got to take him then, right? So I think we could end up with that same kind of situation. It really depends on the picks in front of them. Um, Obviously, with Cleveland at number one, always a team that is looking to find a discount wherever they can. So do they take someone that maybe isn't one of those top guys to try and underslot them? And how does that shake up with the rest of the board? You have Colorado picking ahead of the White Sox, who really badly needs some pitching. So do they go ahead and take Chase Burns or Hagen Smith? Do they, and how does that work? I mean, I guess you could look at it like this. Your top tier, like, guys that I would say are 1-1 contenders. You have Travis Bazana, Charlie Condon, JJ Weatherholt. If any of those guys are still on the board at 5, I think the White Sox have to do it. I think they have to. And there's a chance that they could be. I mean, Jack Caglianone has been getting top 5 buzz. There's a chance that someone in that top 4 goes and gets him. And if that happens and Colorado does take a pitcher, now you're sitting with a guarantee that one of those 3 guys is on the board for the Sox at 5. So I don't know what their strategy is going in other than get the best bat available that you can. I subscribe to the philosophy of drafting up the middle or drafting, guys that are going to actually be impact positions, not necessarily first baseman. Which is why personally I would stay away from Caglianone just because of that defensive limits that he has. But I mean, I'm really interested to see what happens because, a lot of people are still thinking that Cleveland's pick is up in the air. I mean, I was reading, I want to say it was Jim Callis just a couple days ago who said there are still 4 or 5 guys that Cleveland is considering at number 1. So, like, I think it could get really interesting with the money aspect of the draft because if teams are looking to save money, that could lead to some very, very good talents falling. And I think the White Sox need to be ready to capitalize on that.
Yeah, and I think that's a majorly under talked about aspect of the draft is it's not quite like the NBA or the NFL draft where it's draft best player. It's drafting the best player that also fits in your allotted bonus pool because every team has a different amount of money that they can spend on each draft. The White Sox are in a solid position this year. They have the 6th highest bonus pool in the MLB, partially because of the trade they made when they shipped off Garvey Santos. And one of the pieces of that return that they got for him was the 68th overall pick in this draft, which has just under a 2 million allotted slot bonus added to that pick alone. So because of that, they're in a good spot where they have money to spend. Are they going to go full slot? If Caglianon is there at 5 or if JJ Weatherholt is there at 5, do they go full slot on one of those guys? Or do they go with one of the prep bats who really isn't in play to go in the top 4? So even though these guys are in high school and they have college commitments, you might be able to get a Connor Griffin or Bryce Rayner for a bit under slot and then use that in round 2 if you wanted to say, I'm just going to use this as an example, but because Mike Shirley loves his homegrown talent guys, but say you want to get Ryan Sloan from York High School, try to float him down into the 2nd round. That could be an option if you go under slot in round 1. There's really so many different ways it can go, and I think you're right. It all depends on what is Cleveland going to do. Are they going to go the safe route and just take one of the top 2 guys, or are they going to try to go under slot a little bit and grab Weatherholt or Chase Burns and then try to use that money later? I don't really know. I mean, Cleveland really is a huge mystery right now, and it's hard to talk about who we think is going to be available for the White Sox because a lot of it depends on who they're going to pick. If they do just go with the standard taking the best guy and they get one of Condon or Bazana, then I think the board falls the way most would expect. I think then you're going to see the other one of those 2 go. I think Caglianone goes before the White Sox, and I think you're going to see potentially Chase Burns go in the top 4 as well. I think that's a very likely scenario if Cleveland just goes the standard take the top guy route. We don't know if they're going to do that. I don't, like you said, there's a bunch of guys in play right now. I don't know if they know what they're going to do right now. So it's interesting because there's just so many different ways this board could fall. And again, I don't think any scenario is a bad scenario for the White Sox right now. I know that there's going to be a lot of Sox fans that would cringe at the thought of drafting Jack Caglianone. And I'm not saying I'm in favor of drafting a first baseman with that fifth overall pick. I've also seen them connected a bit to Nick Kurtz, but I think that's a much less likely scenario, who's also a first baseman. I think it would be Caglianone if they go that route. In that scenario, you're still drafting the best power bat in the draft, though. So it's like, is it ideal? No. Is it the end of the world? Also no. So it is crazy to think about all these scenarios. And I just went on a rant, started talking about the players. So I think that we should start talking about some of these options. And since I've just talked enough about Jack Caglianone, what are your thoughts on Caglianone as a potential fit with the White Sox? I know you already started to allude to your thoughts a little bit, but let's talk it out a little more here.
Yeah, I did kind of give away my opinion. There's nothing wrong with him as a player necessarily. Like you said, he has very, very good power that should translate over to the major league level. A lot of people are saying he's the best power bat in the draft class. So that, I mean, obviously that is something that the White Sox need is power because their offense on the major league team, at least right now, lacks a lot of that. So, if he were the pick, I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world, but you do wonder about the defense, at where he's going to fit long term, probably first base or DH. And there are some concerns about, playing with wood bats with him, as well as the strikeout rate has been pretty high. He's cut down on it this year, so he's actually made some improvements in that department, which is promising. But you do wonder how his game is going to translate to the professional level. There's tools there for sure. There's definitely tools there, and I don't. I've seen people comparing him to Andrew Vaughn just because they play the same position. Cags is huge. He is much bigger than Andrew Vaughn. He is much more of a power hitter than Andrew Vaughn. He's also a left-hander, and Andrew Vaughn's right-handed. So there are definitely some significant differences between him and Vaughn. I wouldn't worry too much that he's going to turn into, he's just a slow right-handed first baseman that hits too many ground balls. I don't think he really has the same kind of profile. But, the general philosophy of drafting a first baseman in the top five, I mean, even with guys who seemingly can't miss, like Spencer Torkelson with the Tigers, it hasn't really worked out so far. So it's something that I feel like the White Sox would be kind of limiting the upside of the pick if they did that. But if they want some quick power, some quick left-handed power to put in their minor league system, that's the right place to look.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree with everything you just said. I'm not over the moon about the potential of drafting Caglianone, and it's nothing to do with him as a player. It's really just the defensive value using a top five pick on that type of player. Say the White Sox do make that move, and he's there at five. I think if he's there at five, I think they would pull the trigger. I'll be completely honest. They don't have a ton of first basemen in their system, and maybe some people are going to look at that as a good thing. But there really is no true long-term solution there because I don't think, I mean, granted, Andrew Vaughn's been looking a lot better over the last month and a half, but I still don't think people view him as the long-term solution at first base. Cags is someone that could absolutely be that solution. He's got the massive power. You're right. There's concerns about the strikeout rate. He has cut that down this year, but he also, my biggest concern with him really is the lack of walks. I think he's someone that chases a little bit too often, and he's got a really good hit tool to go along with that power, so he gets away with it, especially in college. I'm concerned about how much he's going to get away with that at the MLB level. But again, the hit tool is there. The power is absolutely real. He's a guy that's going to hit 30 plus home runs if he hits his peak every season. at the major league level, and he's going to be a solid number 4 hitter in a lineup. You could do worse. You could do a lot worse. You could shoot for more upside, but you could do a lot worse than that pick. And I wouldn't be mad at it. I wouldn't be thrilled, but I'd understand it. He's that good that he might not even be available to the White Sox at 5. So I think it'd be fine. But another college hitter that may be available, may not be available, all kind of depends on what Cleveland does, is a guy that we've already talked about a little bit as well in JJ Weatherholt, who, I mean, this is a guy who came into this year as the clear-cut favorite to be the top prospect in this draft. He played mostly second base before the season, and the plan was always to transition him to shortstop, but he had a hamstring injury. That's another thing that's going to make White Sox fans cringe, but he did deal with a hammy injury to start the season, came back, got off to a little bit of a slow start, but as the season went on, he really caught fire and went back to that prospect that everyone thought he was. Noah, if he's there at 5, what do you think the Sox should do?
I think that's the ideal scenario, in my opinion, is Weatherholt ends up on the board at 5 and the Sox go get him. I mean, I love the player. I love the tools. I think he can hit like nobody else in the draft, really. I think there's power potential there as well. Wouldn't it be ironic if a hamstring injury helps out the White Sox after hurting the White Sox for so many years? Now a hamstring injury by JJ Weatherholt keeps him on the board at 5 and gets him on the White Sox. I think that would just be poetic justice right there. But no, I love the player. I think he's got the athleticism to play shortstop at the next level. Even if not, second base, third base, I think he's versatile enough to be any of those spots. Get him in your system. The bat is worth it. Even though you might have an idea of your potential future infield. I think that's a problem to deal with later. You get him in the system, get him playing, and then make that decision. But no, great player. And if I were, I guess ideal situation for me is like, Charlie Condon somehow falls to number 5, but I'll say realistic ideal scenario. And there are a couple scenarios where Weatherholt is on the board at 5, and I definitely make that pick if I'm the White Sox.
Yeah, that would be one that's hard to pass up on. And again, the fact that he's even been playing shortstop this year, I think just further helps that case. You are right, though. That would be so ironic if a hamstring injury finally helped the White Sox for a change. But no, he's a guy I would be over the moon if they added him into the system. Get all the shortstops or middle infielders you want in your system. If anything, you can move them to a different position later to make it work. But
it's the Padres strategy. It's what they're doing with their major league team. I mean, all 4 of their starting infielders are former shortstops, and 2 of their outfielders are. Like, the Padres are getting as many shortstops as they can and moving them all around the field. I think if you have the athleticism to be able to play shortstop, you can play pretty much anywhere on the field. So I don't see any problem with, stacking up the middle talent.
Completely agree with that. I mean, again, you're right. If you can play shortstop, you could probably play anywhere. It's a good problem to have if you have too many shortstops, and I think the Padres are finding that out right now. But the next 2 prospects I want to talk about are both guys that are higher upside picks, carry a bit more risk, but the consensus is one or both of them should be available to the White Sox at 5. And I'm talking about the 2 prep batters, the 2 top prep batters in this draft. And that's Connor Griffin, who is played a lot of shortstop, but most view him as a center fielder moving forward, and Bryce Rayner, who a lot of people do view as a shortstop moving forward. Say the board falls the way it should, and we don't have the option of drafting Kaggs or Weatherholt. These are 2 very likely options. And Noah, what are your thoughts if we do go the prep route here and we draft one of those 2 guys?
Yeah, I'll admit I don't know as much about Rayner as I do Griffin. if there was one like specific position group that I would say the White Sox farm needs more of, it would be outfielders. And so Connor Griffin is a natural fit. He's very raw, as most high school bats are, but there's a whole lot of upside there. And he would be probably, him and George Wolkow, like their top two outfield prospects, and you'd be looking at those guys as your future of your outfield. But um, I guess you really have to look at what is your timeline here, because if you're looking for guys that can come up and contribute in the next year or two, like if you're hoping to turn things around in the next year or two, and you want guys that'll be a part of that, I'm not sure going with a prep bat is the move, because you know the problem is the guy's 18. He's going to be at least probably 3 or 4 years from being in the majors. So there's an argument to be had that they should go with someone that's closer to their timeline. But at the same time, part of the thing that part of the issue with the last rebuild was all your prospects came up, your farm system was depleted, you had nobody left. So there is something to be said about getting waves of talent in your farm system. So having one group of guys that come up, but you still have another group that's coming in a couple of years that'll make an impact. So if that's something that they're interested in, I like the talent, especially with Connor Griffin a lot. Um, I mean, I don't know. I would prefer that pick over something like Caglianone or Kurtz or one of these corner players. I would prefer they did something like that, even though he's farther away. But I wouldn't do something like that if, someone like Weatherholt is available. I would go and get the guy that's going to be up here sooner.
Yeah. I'm going to go on record here and just put it out there. Even if Weatherholt's available at 5, I wouldn't blame the Sox for going Connor Griffin. And there's a lot of risk that comes with Connor Griffin. But there's not a player in this draft with louder tools than him. This is a legitimate 5-tool prospect where all of his tools have a chance to be plus to double plus. I mean, you don't find those types of players very often. This is a guy he stole 80 plus stolen bases in each of his last 2 high school seasons. He's got legitimate 60 grade raw power. He's viewed as a potential Gold Glove caliber center fielder going forward. There are a little bit of concerns with his hit tool, yes. There's typically concerns with hit tools for most prep hitters, though. It's not uncommon. That's just such an upside pick, and the risk is crazy with that. But I also would prefer my team to take risks like that. And if that risk could lead to a perennial all-star caliber player, like Connor Griffin could be if he hits his ceiling, I'm all for it.
Well, I think part of it's the money thing that we talked about earlier too, because a guy like Griffin, you can probably get away with paying him a little bit under slot, which gives you more money to play with in round 2 and round 3. So maybe you can get a guy that should have gone higher, but you can get them to fall back to round 2. So you have to decide if that's worth it too. Maybe you don't get as, I don't want to say as much of a sure thing, but you take a riskier prospect in round 1, a guy that has, like you said, as much upside as anybody in the draft, but there's bigger risk involved. And then you get another talent that you wouldn't have gotten had you gone with the safer pick, in round 2 or 3. And so now you potentially have 2 or 3 players that are high risk but high reward, and you're increasing your chances that one of them at least pans out and you get at least one, impact major league player out of there. So I understand your argument. I think gambling on upside is always a good play for sure. For me, I just feel like there is as much upside as in some of these college hitters as there is in Griffin. But it also kind of depends who's on the board, like we talked about. If Weatherholt and Bazana and Condon are gone, I would have no problem with them taking Griffin and gambling on the upside because I don't necessarily like that second tier of college hitter as much as I like Griffin. But if those guys are still on the board, I don't necessarily think the risk is worth it as much. You know what I mean?
Nope, that is entirely fair. Now, Noah, I was going to end this episode asking you what you want to happen at pick 5, and then I was going to follow up with talking about what I want to happen. I think we pretty much already covered that. So instead, I'm going to shift it a little bit, and I'm going to ask you to give your prediction on what you actually think is going to happen when the White Sox pick at number 5 overall is up.
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess you're asking me to project the top 4 picks as well. So
Yeah, yes, I
um,
am.
this will
It's
be
hard.
this will be my official on record prediction. If I'm wrong, it's not my fault. If I'm right, I want all the credit. Um,
Fair
I
enough.
think Cleveland is going to take Weatherholt at number 1. I think that'll be their way of saving money and still getting one of the top talents. I think that means Cincinnati goes with Charlie Condon. I think Colorado's locked into a pitcher. They'll go with Chase Burns. And Oakland is going to take Bazana if he's still there. And I think that means Jack Caglianone is on the board for the White Sox, and I think they'll go ahead and do that. So that will be my official prediction.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's exactly how I think it's going to happen too. And you know, the thing is, Cleveland. I agree with you. I think they're going to try to cut a little bit with that first pick, and I do think they're going to end up going with Weatherholt, saving a little bit to use later in the draft, and that's going to cause a trickle effect of, well, where's Condon going to go? Where's Bazana going to go? Is a pitcher going to sneak in there, which I think is going to happen? Yeah, I am right there with you. I think that that top 4 happens pretty much that exact way, and Caglianone will be there at 5. And there's been a lot of smoke about the White Sox interest in him. I do think they would take him at 5, and they would pay full slot for him at 5. Which,
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember hearing, other than Caglianone, I don't remember hearing about like so and so prospect visited the White Sox, met with the front office, and then the manager was asked directly about the player. I mean, like even in past years, I don't remember that happening much. So the fact that it was reported that Caglianone came to the south side to the stadium, met with the front office, and then Pedro Grifol was asked about Caglianone and had nothing but good things to say, like that's either a lot of smoke to get someone to go and take him before them, or there's genuine interest there, and it's a player that they're strongly considering with the 5th overall pick.
yeah, I mean, even going back to 2021, where there was all the smoke in the world that if Colson Montgomery was there for the White Sox pick, they were going to take him. Like, that was a very unsurprising pick. They didn't go as far as to have the guy come to the stadium, meet with the front office. There wasn't people talking about him in manager press conferences. You're exactly right. Like, there's too much smoke here to ignore. And I think that the likelihood of Cags falling to the White Sox is very real. And if he's there, I just think that there's zero chance they're gonna pass on him. And again, I don't want to sound disappointed in this because it shouldn't be a disappointment to get the best power hitter in the draft. I'm just gonna flat out say that. Is it the most exciting pick? No. Is it going to scare some fans because it's another first base prospect? Yes. Although he is a two-way player, maybe that'll play into it. I don't think he's a two-way player in the MLB. I do think he's solely a hitter in the MLB, but we do have to throw it out there that he is viewed as a first baseman and a pitcher. I think he's more of a second round pitcher than a first round pitcher. He's still a top 10 hitter regardless. But if that's the pick, that's the pick. And the White Sox have their first baseman in the future. So
I
it
guess
is what it is.
is there? I don't know if you know this. Is there like has he played at the outfield at all? Like in college, is that something that he's done? Because if he's a pitcher, obviously that means the arm is there. Does he have the athleticism to maybe try him in right field? See if he can hold his own out there, and like the arm gets it done. Is he able to play it better than Gavin Sheets? Is he able to play average right field? I don't know, but is that something that they consider doing if they take him? I
You
just,
know, it,
I mean, knowing Mike Shirley, taking a first baseman in the top 5 doesn't feel like Mike Shirley's MO. But
mhm.
with the White Sox, we never really know who's making the pick, do we? So, you know, is this Mike Shirley's choice? I don't know. Is it even a possibility that like are they even considering taking him? I really don't know. It's hard to tell because you don't really ever know who's running things with them, and so I mean we'll see. But
Yeah, I mean, we will see. It. Trust me, the idea of him playing in the outfield is something that's popped into my head too. No one's really talking about his potential in the outfield. He is a below average athlete at the very least. I mean, this is a 6'5", 250-pound first baseman. You're right, though. They have put Gavin Sheets in the outfield, and they credited his arm for part of the reason of why they wanted to try him out in the outfield. I mean, Cags is definitely going to have a better arm being a guy that can touch the upper 90s with his fastball. I would toy around with the idea. I don't know if the Sox will. I don't know if a smart MLB team would, I'll be honest. But weirder things have happened. It would put me on board with the pick more if there was even a small chance that you could stick him even in left field. Or I mean, there's not as much value there, but even if he was a left fielder, I would be a bit more on board with the pick. I'm just gonna say don't hold your breath on it because I think there's a reason most scouts are looking at him as a first base only prospect. But it is the White Sox. They do love playing first baseman in the outfield. We all know that from experience. So who knows? But that is just about all the time we've got for this episode, Noah. So before we end this one, I'm going to give you, I know we did it last month too, but I'm going to give you another chance right here. Please plug where all of our listeners can find you.
yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at NoahP245. I have Instagram with the same handle, but I don't really talk baseball on Instagram. So, I mean, feel free to follow me if you want. But if you're looking for baseball content there, you're going to be disappointed. But yeah, definitely Twitter. You'll get a lot of baseball content and maybe some jokes and takes that you disagree with. But who doesn't love that every once in a while?
Trust me, he's got some good ones on his Twitter. He's got some good jokes. He's always got me cracking up. So I do recommend giving him a follow on Twitter or X at least. Do what you want on Instagram. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. But thank you again, Noah, for joining us. This has been another great episode of the Pipeline to 35th with Noah Phalen. My name is Michael Suareo, and thank you all for joining us once again.